المشارق والمغارب خلق الإنسان من طين لازب ثم جعله نطفة بين الصلب والترائب خلق منه زوجه وجعل منهما الأبناء والأقارب ولطف به فنوع له المطاعم والمشارب نحمده تبارك وتعالى حمد الطامع في المزيد والطالب ونعوذ بنور وجهه الكريم من شر العواقب وندعوه دعاء المستغفر الوجه التائب أن يحفظنا من كل شر حاضر أو غائب وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه خاتم أنبيائه اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Praise be to God, Lord of the Easts and the Wests. He created man from sticky clay, then placed him as a sperm drop between the loins and the ribs. He created from him his wife, and from them made children and relatives and tribes. He was kind to him, providing him with a variety of foods and drinks. We praise him, blessed and exalted, with the praise of one who desires more and seeks, and we seek refuge in the light of his noble face from the evil of consequences. And we call upon him for the supplication of the one who seeks forgiveness, fearful and repentant, to protect us from all evil, present or future. And I bear witness that there is no God but God, the strong and the victorious. And I bear witness that our Master, our beloved, and our intercessor Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O who you believe, have piety and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not die except in the state of submission to Him, Islam. The current American political social climate makes effective Muslim leadership especially crucial. Rising incidents of Islamophobia, discrimination policies, immigration issues, and social polarization have created basically an environment where Muslim communities need to be strong and have advocates and guides. Leaders must address both external challenges such as hate crimes, employment discrimination, and political marginalization. And internal ones include youth identity struggles, generational conflicts, and questions about religious practice in American society. Effective American Muslim leadership today requires unprecedented skills, deep Islamic knowledge, cultural competency across diverse Muslim communities, sophisticated understanding of Muslim political and social systems, and the ability to communicate across religious and cultural boundaries. These leaders must be both spiritual guides and civic advocates, both preservers of tradition and innovators of contemporary challenges. What triggered this topic for me was the recent election, specifically the mayor election in New York City. And I see it as really an important topic to address. And I want to actually dispel from an American Muslim leadership. It's like, where are we with this? Let me begin with a question. Which one is your Muslim leader right now? Here in the United States? Across the United States? Do we have one that we look up to as a guide for leadership? Do we have, on the state level, do we have one that we can look up to? How about in the local community? Right? Do we have a leader that would help us basically guide us in the ambiguity of times? So today my topic will be about this. Of course, leadership, many people have written thousands of books, by the way, about it. I'm not going to be able to distill it here, but I'm going to give you my perspective and why it's important that we need to focus on and give you some thoughts and different information and insights about leadership, what it means, what's a manager, what's a leader. So, and by the way, this is helpful for you if you're a professional, also on a personal level, at the work level, societal level. These ideas or methodologies and frameworks will help you frame things and understand how things operate in this world. So what's the difference between leadership and management? In a nutshell, leaders are focused on number one, building relationships, right? Talking to people, connecting with them, and also setting long-term vision. I'm talking about 5, 10 years, generational to come. That's what a leader is. And also, they provide guidance in times of ambiguity, right? There are unknown situations, issues that we have not faced before. We can look up to those people to be our guiding light in those dark moments. Managers, they focus on short-term results and efficiencies, right? They're focused and they have specific rules that they follow. Leader is much broader. So leaders are people who can move individuals or resources towards a goal or a destination, vision, builds that for the community, okay? Using tools like persuasion, etc. So, what are some of the techniques that leaders, use to lead? One of them is luring, meaning you're enticing people to follow you, right? Give them some reward. If you're in the work environment, you're going to give them a raise, you're going to give them a higher position, right? In Islam, what we have for enticement? Paradise, right? Allah gives you, an incentive. And then the second one is threats or coercion or fear of punishment, right? I'm going to punish you if you don't follow my lead. If you don't do this, I'm going to do this to you. Hence, firing, lack of promotion of the workforce, from an Islamic perspective, is hellfire if you don't follow the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the end, there's tangible, basically, gain or loss. Then leaders possess a very important skill, which is communication skills, right? Be able to give messages to people. Now, they don't have to be very eloquent, by the way, and this is a misconception. As long as the leader know how to convey their message, it's sufficient. And then the fourth and most important one is the power of persuasion. Okay? And this is actually the most important skill, that I'm able to influence people to follow me, follow a certain cause, explain to them, and that has very long-lasting effect. And then the fourth characteristics of a leader is their behavior, their role model, okay, their conduct within the society, and so forth. Statistically speaking, by the way, and scientifically speaking, are there good and bad managers or leaders? Of course, we have plenty examples in Islam and in history. Yeah, Hitler, look at our political situation now, question mark. And those leaders, they can spew and rally people in good way or bad way, right? In Quran, for example, historically, we have bad leaders like Fir'aun, okay, from a kingmanship, right? Leading a whole country. You have in the financial sector was Qarun, right? A financial corrupt person that was a leader but was, able to influence people, and people wished to be like him. Statistically speaking, there are only 1.5 to 2% people possess natural born leadership traits. Okay? 1% of the people, they have no capability to lead or be leaders. Okay? Then there is about 78 to 80% of people, they have some traits within them, leadership. Okay? They may need some training, they may need some knowledge, they practice their skills. And by the way, each one of us, one way or the other, we have some variation of leadership. We don't know it because we just live and we do things naturally. But once we start to frame it, we have different levels of leadership and how we can basically unearth them and use them into a practical way. There are 5 misconceptions about leaders. I'm just going to shock some of you when I start to talk to you about it. And I'm going to basically connecting this to Islam and events that happen in the Islamic history. A lot of people think that religious knowledge, Imam or Shaykh, should be the leader. Okay? Why? Because that person amassed so much knowledge, right? And I'll tell you, that's not the case. I'll give you the example of Sayyidina Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. He was actually one of the first 5 people that embraced Islam. So from the early get-go of Islamic history, right? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said about him, their earth and heaven did not carry or shade one more truthful tongue or person than Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. He was very honest, very truthful, very humble person. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not give him any leadership position. Okay. One time he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Oh Rasulullah, appoint me to take some leadership position." Why? He did not want to do this for fame or ego or anything like this. He wanted to genuinely serve. And what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tell him? Oh, la tu'ammaranna ala ithnayn. It's like if there are two people, if you Abu Dharr and another person, you're not to lead, you're to follow. And he was a very knowledgeable person. In fact, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib said about him, Abu Dharr is a pot full of knowledge. But yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not appoint him and told him, you are not to lead, period. So knowledge had nothing to do with this. Now again, this is specialized or specific knowledge. Second thing, piety. A lot of people think, well, this person, leader, has to be so taqwa, right? You must follow somebody who's praying all night and so forth and all stuff. I will share with you some of the thoughts of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. They came to Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he's the Imam of Sunnah by the way, and they posed this scenario to him. Oh Imam, should we follow a leader that is strong militarily or in ruling, but corrupt in his personal traits? Or should we follow a person who's pious, a taqi, but weak in kind of this business affairs? And he gave his famous edict. Think about this. He said, I will go with the strong, corrupt person, with the fasiq. And he said, that person that does not pray or do some misdeeds, his sin is reflected in his personal life. His accountability with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But his strength will benefit the whole ummah. Okay? And the taqi, his piety is reflection and beneficial to him with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But his weakness will doom the Muslim ummah. So again, and we need to frame this and think about it from that perspective. The third element was seniority. We believe that if somebody has been there for the longest time, he'll become the de facto or the default leader, just because he's been there for a long time. Whether in business, whether in Islamic community, whether in anything. And that is not the case. And I'll tell you a few examples. We said the example of Abu Dharr, right? And then I'll give you the example of Amr ibn al-As and Khalid ibn al-Walid. Amr ibn al-As, Umar ibn al-Khattab said on him, ما يكون لأبي عبد الله إلا أن يمشي في الأرض أميرا. The meaning of this, he said, Amr ibn al-As, Amr ibn al-Khattab saying, when he walks, Abu Abdullah, this person, the father of Abdullah, cannot be but a leader, an amir. His natural qualities, his behavior, the way he walks, the way he talks, the way he thinks, the way he operates, a natural born leader. And another one was Khalid ibn al-Walid. Amr ibn al-As, and Khalid ibn al-Walid, both of them, they embraced Islam later, towards the end of the life of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Within 4 months to 5 months of them embracing Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam appoints Amr ibn al-As to go and quell some rebellion and some issues with some tribes. Basically, he's taken the leadership. Who was in his army? Abu Bakr, Umar, and many of the other companions. So this person that has embraced Islam 4 to 5 months doesn't have much knowledge, doesn't have much piety, but yet within a short period of time, they are the commanders, they are the leaders of this movement. And then, talking about seniority, Umar ibn Khattab was not too happy with some of the conduct of Amr ibn al-As. So he wanted to rebel against him. So he went to Abu Bakr and he said, "Oh, Abu Bakr, don't you see? Have you say something about this? I'm not agreeing with him on this issue, that issue." And then the wisdom of Abu Bakr shows up right here, and leadership. And he tells him, Rasulullah appointed him because he's better than you in this situation. We're going to follow him, no question asked. He didn't say, "Well, I've been Muslim for 20 years, all of a sudden this newbie comes in and I have to follow him? How is this?" It's a privilege of seniority, right? Same thing with Khalid ibn Walid. He was a commander for the Battle of Mu'tah, right? And he was short-lived. And by the way, he was sacked by Umar ibn al-Khattab. He was removed, fired as the commander. So he sent his replacement was Abu Ubaidah Amir al-Jarrah, one of the greatest Sahabis of Rasulullah and his complement. Abu Ubaidah was a wise person. What did he do? He did not want to piss off Umar, of course. So he said, "I'm going to make a council, and Khalid will be part of this council to lead. Okay? And by the way, I will give the privileges to Khalid to overrule any shura decision." So you have a whole council. Whatever Khalid basically says goes. Nobody goes against him. His opinion prevails. And then all of a sudden, Khalid goes and he does few things without seeking consent from Abu Ubaidah. He goes and basically attacks some Roman villages and so forth. I mean, he's a leader. And then Abu Ubaidah says his famous comment, "Ammara Khalidun nafsa." Khalid appointed himself as a leader. He didn't need anyone to appoint him. He made himself a de facto leader. It's a great trait. Although he was short in Islam seniority. Age. A lot of us think of leaders, they have to be so wise and all. Maybe, but not necessarily. And the perfect example for this, Rasulullah ﷺ appointed Usama bin Zayd. He was a youth person. 17 and a half, the scholars say, to 18 years old. He was the head of the greatest Islamic army assembled by Rasulullah ﷺ. And again, who was in that army? All the Sahaba, all the companions, all the Muslim senior leadership. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, and so forth, because it was a major thing. And of course, Umar was very vocal about his displeasure, and he said, "Ammara alayna sabiya." He appointed on us a little child, a little kid, basically, to lead. So the word of Umar got reverberated and got to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this was basically a few days before his death. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam got up 3 days before his death and gave his famous speech. And one of it was asserting and explaining the leadership of Usama bin Zayd. He said, "Wallahi innahu la khaliqun lil imara." He was swearing by Allah that he was the right leader, commander, and he has natural leadership abilities. Naturally, as his father. And you question his leadership, he is better than all of you in this position. A young kid. Now, if you think about it, in our Muslim community, do we really empower the youth? And this is actually one of the wisdom and the greatest methodologies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he used to look at things and did things in untraditional way, but very effective. Empowering the youth, making them, part of the leadership and decision making, listening to them, empowering their creative thoughts and ideas on how to do things. And then the fifth thing is about gender. And I know that there is a hadith talking about that women should not lead. By the way, there are 20-something, 2+ explanations about it. I will not go into the details, but I'll give you a distilled version in terms of women can lead in different capacities, right? And we should empower them to lead in their specialty and in their areas. And some of the scholars basically venture into this, whether they need to be president, prime minister, or not at that top level leadership. I'm not talking about that now. We're talking about making women inclusive in the decision-making process and societal issues. And by the way, scientifically speaking, women are more creative than men. Okay? And they do have shura consultation. And this is backed by studies, by the way. Right? And they have many other things. But what I'm saying is that we need to be inclusive to build our leadership in the Muslim community and be inclusive of our sisters as well. أقول ما تسمعون أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. I know the talk is very dense and deep, but I felt the necessity really to bring this forward. We need to assemble as a Muslim community, start to basically develop our leadership skills. And I'll tell you this, it begins at home. It begins at home, and it begins with you as faithfuls to say, well, I really need to take a step back and start to think about myself, about my family, about my community, and about the whole Muslim ummah as a whole. If I give you the example of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, he was meticulously built as a leader from the get-go. Since day one, he was born. They provided the environment for him to lead. Education, care, instilling in him, you're a leader. Working in his soul, his education, his background, his Islamic faith, his physical abilities to be a knight, a warrior, a fighter, his intellect, right? And it begins at the family level. So we need to discover those individuals within our Muslim community, and we need to nurture that. We have to have the proper tarbiyah and upbringing and rising at home to cultivate basically Islamic and personal values. We need to train them well, educate them well. We need to give them special skills that they can be basically professionals in this world. And we as a community, we need to nurture that and be supportive of them. One of the issues that we have, we tend to take the smartest people. Just because they came up with some good ideas, we be creative in taking them down and criticizing them. We need to take a step back and, before we criticize or, give negative things about people, to really assess the value of whatever they're saying. And we should be inclusive. There are no dumb ideas, right? I think we just need to be, it's a matter of perspective. We need to look at them and support our Muslim community. Now, the thought about New York, Muslim versus Shia versus this, I have a few thoughts really. Are we electing, and this is for all of us, people into elected positions or officials to be sheikhs? Question mark. Are we electing people to be sheikhs in those positions? Hypothetically, let's say now we succeed in getting a sheikh Salafi